You know what hurts more than being hated? Being invisible. Because at least hate means someone sees you. I grew up in a house with two parents who loved one of their daughters and tolerated the other. And for 23 years, I thought I was just the difficult one. The unlovable one. The one who had to earn what my sister got for free. I'm Maya. And this is the story of the DNA test that cracked my family in half and finally set me free. Pause. Let the words land. Let me take you back to the beginning. I'm the older sister. By 2 years. My sister's name is Danielle. Danny for short. She's beautiful. She always was. Long hair, easy smile, the kind of kid that adults just fawned over. Me. I was quieter, darker. I took after my dad's side, or so I was told. Stockier build, curly hair, skin a shade or two deeper. I never thought anything of it. But I noticed things. Small things at first. Like how when Danny cried, Mom would rush to her. Hold her. When I cried. I got, "You're the big sister, Maya. You need to be stronger." I was 7 the first time I heard that. 7. And I believed it. I actually believed there was something wrong with me that needed fixing. Danny got the bigger bedroom. Danny got new clothes while I got hand-me-downs from cousins. Danny got Mom staying up all night when she was sick. When I had the flu at 9 years old, I was told to sleep it off and call if I got worse. Don't get me wrong, my parents weren't monsters. They fed me, clothed me, sent me to school. But love. Real, warm, chosen love. That was Danny's. I was just, also there. I want to tell you about 2 birthdays. Because they explain everything. My 18th birthday. I'd been working at a grocery store for 8 months to save up for a used car. I asked my parents if they could help with the difference. Just a small amount. My mom said, and I quote, "Maya, you're an adult now. Time to figure things out on your own." My dad nodded and went back to watching TV. I cried in my room. Alone. Like always. Danny's 18th birthday, 2 years later, my parents threw a party. 40 people. A DJ. And they surprised her with a brand new white Honda Civic with a bow on it. A bow. I watched my sister scream and cry and hug my parents. My dad was crying too. I had never, not once in my life, seen my father cry over something I did. I smiled through the whole party. I hugged her. I told her she deserved it. And later that night, I sat on the back porch and I asked myself, for the first time out loud, why doesn't anyone love me the same way? I didn't have the answer. Not yet. I left for university at 18 and I told myself I wouldn't look back. I threw myself into studying psychology, ironically. I wanted to understand people. I wanted to understand myself. I made friends. I laughed. I built a life that felt like mine for the very first time. But here's the thing about wounds that never heal, they don't stay quiet. I struggled to trust people. I over-explained myself constantly, like I always had to justify my right to take up space. In relationships, I was always waiting for the moment someone would choose someone else over me. Because that was my normal. My therapist, yes, I got a therapist, best decision I ever made. She once said to me, "Maya, it sounds like you grew up feeling like a guest in your own home." And I had to stop the session because I couldn't breathe. Because that was exactly it. Exactly it. 2 years ago, my grandmother, my dad's mom, turned 80. Big family reunion. People flying in from 3 different states. I hadn't been home in almost a year. I was nervous, honestly. The day was fine. Surface level fine, you know? Danny was glowing, she'd just gotten engaged, and the attention around her was the usual hurricane. I was fine with that. I'd stopped fighting it. But then something strange happened. My aunt, my dad's sister, Auntie Lorraine, who I'd always loved, pulled me aside in the kitchen. She looked at me for a long moment. She had this expression on her face that I couldn't name. Almost like grief. She said, "You look so much like your grandfather, Maya. Around the eyes. The way you carry yourself." She squeezed my hand and walked away. Left me standing there. I didn't know what to do with that. But I couldn't shake it. A few weeks later, I made the mistake of telling my mom how I felt. I'd been in therapy long enough to think I could handle it like an adult. I called her. I told her, calmly, that I felt like Danny had always been treated differently. That I felt unseen growing up. I didn't scream. I didn't accuse. I just said, "Mom, I need you to hear me." You want to know what she said? She said, "Maya, you were always so difficult. Even as a baby, you were difficult. Danny needed more from us, that's all." And then she said, and this is the part that stopped my heart, "You don't understand everything about our situation. And some things are better left alone. Some things are better left alone." I replayed that sentence for 3 weeks straight. What situation? What was she talking about? My parents had been married for 30 years. There was no drama, no scandal, nothing. Or so I thought. I called my Auntie Lorraine. Lorraine picked up on the second ring. I told her about the conversation with my mom. The silence on the other end lasted so long that I thought the call dropped. Then she said, very quietly, "How old are you now, Maya?" 26, I told her. Another long pause. "Come see me." I drove 4 hours to her house the following Saturday. She made tea. She sat across from me at her kitchen table. And she looked at me like she was deciding something. Like she'd been deciding it for a very, very long time. She said, "Your father loves you, Maya. He has always loved you. But there is something your parents decided to keep from you. And I have disagreed with that decision for 26 years. She paused. She looked down at her tea. She said, "Your mother had an affair. Before you were born. Your dad, the man who raised you, he forgave her. He chose to stay. He chose to raise you as his own. But he always struggled with it. Not with you, with the situation. And your mother. I think she carried guilt she didn't know what to do with." I sat at that table for I don't know how long. My tea went cold. My hands were shaking. I wasn't difficult. I wasn't unlovable. I was a reminder. I was the evidence of something that had almost destroyed their marriage. And they hadn't known how to love me without reopening that wound. Every time they looked at me. I drove home and ordered a DNA test that same day. 3 weeks later. I'm sitting at my kitchen table. Laptop open. Coffee I haven't touched. The email notification came at 7:14 in the morning. I stared at it for 11 minutes before I opened it. I know because I watched the clock. The results confirmed it. My biological father was not the man who had raised me. His name was listed as a DNA match, a man I had never heard of. He was out there. He existed. He had a profile on the Ancestry site with a photo. I looked at his face and I felt two things at the same time, complete devastation and total relief. Because I finally had a reason. I finally had an explanation for 26 years of not quite fitting. I called Lorraine. She answered before the first ring finished. "I know," she said. "That's all. I know." I gave myself a week before I called them. I needed to be stable. I needed to go in as myself, not as the wounded little girl, not as the angry adult, but as Maya. The real Maya. The one I'd been building for years. I asked them to come to me. They drove down together. They sat on my couch and I put the DNA results on the coffee table between us. My mom's face went white. My dad looked at the wall. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything. I asked them one question: why didn't you tell me? My mom cried. She said she thought protecting me meant keeping me from the truth. She said she was ashamed. She said she was sorry. My dad, the man who raised me, he looked at me for the first time that I could remember. Really looked at me. And he said, I tried, Maya. I didn't know how to separate you from the pain. And that was my failure. Not yours. Never yours. That was the most I'd ever heard him say to me. In 26 years. I told them I needed time. They left. And I sat alone in my apartment and let myself feel everything I'd spent 2 decades pushing down. I did reach out to my biological father. His name is Robert. He was a colleague of my mother's. It was a brief relationship. They lost contact before she knew she was pregnant. He didn't know I existed. When I messaged him, I kept it simple. I told him who I was, what the DNA test said, and that I wasn't there to disrupt his life. I just wanted to know where I came from. He wrote back within an hour. He said he was stunned. He said he'd always wanted children but never had any. He asked if we could speak. We video called for 2 hours. I have his eyes. I have his hands. I have his terrible laugh. It was surreal. Beautiful. Terrifying. Real. I don't know what we are yet. What we'll be. But I know I'm not nobody's daughter anymore. People always want to know, are you okay? Did you forgive them? Are you close with your sister? Here's the truth. I'm in progress. That's the most honest thing I can say. My mom and I are rebuilding. Slowly. There are days it feels possible and days it feels impossible. She's in therapy now, her own, which I never expected. I think she's finally confronting things she buried for 30 years. That's her work to do, not mine. My dad, the man who raised me, we talk more now than we ever did. It's awkward sometimes. But it's something. He came to my birthday last year and stayed for dinner. First time he'd done that since I was maybe 10. He didn't say much. But he was there. That meant something. Danny was devastated when she found out. She felt like her whole family was a lie. We went through a rough patch. She didn't speak to me for 3 months because she felt I'd blown everything up. But she came back. She apologized. And for the first time in our lives, we talked as equals. Not as the favorite and the afterthought. Just 2 women who survived the same complicated parents. And Robert, my biological father, we're taking it 1 call at a time. No pressure. No labels. Just getting to know each other. He sent me a photo last week of his mother. My grandmother I never knew. She has my smile. I'm Maya. I'm 26. I know who I am now, or let me say I only know my identity, but there is more to be revealed. I told you my mother had an affair. I told you about growing up invisible, about the DNA test, about finally finding my biological father Robert. I told you it felt like relief. Like closure. Like I finally had an explanation for 26 years of being the child nobody quite knew how to love. I was wrong. Not about those things. Those were all true. But I was wrong about what the story was really about. I thought it was a story about shame. About a marriage that almost broke, and a secret that got buried. I thought my parents hid the truth because they were protecting themselves. What I found out 3 weeks after I met Robert is that none of it was about shame at all. It was about money. It was always about money. And now, they're coming for it. And I'm the only thing standing in their way. After our first video call, Robert and I fell into a routine. Every Sunday evening. Sometimes an hour, sometimes 3. He was careful with me. Patient in a way I wasn't used to from people who shared my blood. He told me about his life in stages, like he was checking how much I could take before offering the next layer. After our first video call, Robert and I fell into a routine. Every Sunday evening. Sometimes an hour, sometimes 3. He was careful with me, patient in a way I wasn't used to from people who shared my blood. He told me about his life in stages, like he was checking how much I could take before offering the next layer. On our 4th call, he asked me about my grandfather, my mother's father. I told him he'd passed away when I was 12, a big family funeral, lots of crying, everyone called him a great man. And Robert went very quiet. He said, "Your grandfather's name, was it Edmund Whitfield?" I said yes. How did he know that? He said, "Pour yourself something strong, Maya. Because what I'm about to tell you is going to reframe everything." Here's what I didn't know about my family. My grandfather, Edmund Whitfield, founded a logistics and freight company in the late 1970s. Whitfield and Sons. Started from nothing, built it into a serious regional operation over 20 years. By the time he retired in the early 2000s, it was worth a considerable amount. Not Silicon Valley money, but real, generational, change your family forever money. My grandfather had 2 children. My mother, Patricia, and her brother, my uncle Gerald. When Edmund retired, he split the company between them. Patricia held 40% of the shares. Gerald held 40%. The remaining 20% was held in a family trust, to be passed to the next generation. Now, Robert, my biological father. He was not just a colleague of my mother's. He was a junior partner at a competing logistics firm. One that, in the early 1990s, had tried to acquire Whitfield and Sons. The deal fell apart, and my grandfather believed the junior partners at that competing firm had leaked proprietary information to undermine the deal's value before negotiations concluded. He believed they had tried to devalue his company to acquire it cheaply. He never proved it. But he never forgave them. And Robert was one of those junior partners. Edmund Whitfield blacklisted Robert from every industry contact he had. He made phone calls. He pulled strings. Robert spent 3 years unable to find work in his field. His career was gutted. His reputation was shredded. Over something he maintained, and still maintains, he had no part in. And somewhere in the middle of all that, while Robert was professionally destroyed by my grandfather, he and my mother had their relationship. My mother knew exactly who Robert was. My grandfather would have burned the world down before allowing any connection between his daughter and the man he considered a traitor. When my mother found out she was pregnant with me, she made a choice. She chose the company. She chose the inheritance. She chose her father's approval over the truth. She married my father, the man who raised me, and she buried Robert's existence entirely. I wasn't hidden because of shame. I was hidden because of a business deal that went bad 25 years ago. I asked Robert if he had proof that he'd done nothing wrong in the acquisition dispute. He said yes. He had emails. He had a paper trail. He had a statement from the actual junior partner who leaked the information, a man who later admitted it, in writing, before he died. Robert had tried for years to clear his name through the industry. But my grandfather's influence was long and his grudges were longer. The damage was done. He never knew about me. He swears it. And after everything, after seeing what my family is capable of, I believe him. So, that's the backstory. That's why I existed in shadow. Now let me tell you what happened when they found out I knew. I made one mistake. I mentioned Robert's name to my cousin Marcus, Gerald's son, during a casual catch-up call. I trusted Marcus. I shouldn't have. Within 48 hours, my uncle Gerald called me. I hadn't spoken to Gerald in almost a year. He's a cold man. Precise. He sounds like someone who went to law school but chose money instead. He asked me, without any preamble, whether I had been in contact with a man named Robert Oakridge. I said yes. There was a pause, and then he said, very calmly, "Maya, I need you to understand what you're getting involved in. And I need you to stop." I asked him what exactly he thought I was getting involved in. He said, "Robert Oakridge is a man who tried to destroy this family's business. Whatever he has told you, he is not to be trusted. He's an opportunist. And if you continue engaging with him, you're going to find yourself in the middle of something very serious." I said, "He's my biological father, Gerald." The silence that followed was the longest 3 seconds of my life. He said, "I know." And then he hung up. He knew. Gerald knew. Which meant my father and mother probably knew too. Which meant this whole family had been sitting on this information for 26 years and no one said a word to me. I called my mother. She didn't want to talk. I told her I had spoken to Gerald and that I knew everything, or enough. She came over the next day. Sat in my living room. Looked exhausted. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I called my mother. She didn't want to talk. I told her I had spoken to Gerald and that I knew everything, or enough. She came over the next day. Sat in my living room. Looked exhausted. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. My grandfather Edmund, ever the businessman, ever the man who trusted no one, had included a clause in his will that specifically dealt with Whitfield and Sons shares. The clause stated that any grandchild seeking to claim their portion of the family trust must be of legitimate family lineage, and explicitly, must have no connection, by blood, marriage, or legal relationship, to any individual or family that had been in active business dispute with Whitfield and Sons. Robert Oakridge. His firm. The acquisition dispute. My grandfather had written me out of the inheritance before I was even born. Not by name, he didn't know I existed. But by bloodline. Because he hated Robert so much that he built a legal wall around his estate to keep Robert's descendants, if any ever existed, from ever touching a cent of Whitfield money. The 20% trust. The one held for the next generation. Under the terms of the will, if I were to make any claim on it, and as a grandchild, I would normally have standing, Gerald's legal team would contest it immediately using that clause. And given my biological connection to Robert, they would almost certainly win. My mother looked at me and said, "We didn't tell you because we were trying to protect you from this." I said, "You were protecting the money." She didn't argue. I underestimated Gerald. I thought I had time to figure out my next move. I didn't. Within a week of our phone call, I received a letter from a law firm I'd never heard of. It was a formal notice advising me that in light of newly surfaced information regarding my parentage, my standing in the Whitfield Family Trust was under review. Under review. Like I was a contract that needed auditing. The letter didn't just target the trust. It referenced potential implications for my mother's 40% stake in Whitfield and Sons, arguing that if my mother had misrepresented the legitimacy of her marriage and concealed material facts about her family situation, there could be grounds to review her standing as a shareholder. Gerald was going after my mother too. He was using me as the lever to pry her shares loose. That was the moment I understood what I was dealing with. Gerald didn't care about the family secret. He didn't care about my dignity or my mother's shame or Robert's reputation. He had been waiting for an opportunity to consolidate control of Whitfield and Sons for years. And I had just handed him the ammunition. By trying to find the truth about who I was, I had started a war. I told Robert everything. He listened without interrupting. That's something I've noticed about him, he never interrupts. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "I owe you an apology. Not for existing, I'm grateful for that every day. but for the world I inadvertently pulled you into just by being your father." I told him he didn't owe me anything. He said, "Actually, Maya, I think I might be able to help you." And then he told me something he had never done anything with. Something he had held onto for years, not for leverage. He said that wasn't in his character, but simply because he believed in documentation. Robert had kept everything from the acquisition dispute. Every email. Every internal memo from his side. The written confession from the man who actually leaked the information. Notarized, dated, signed. He also had something else. Something he'd obtained through a former colleague years after the fact. Documentation suggesting that Edmund Whitfield had not simply reacted to the leak. He had orchestrated it. My grandfather had planted false information, allowed it to be leaked by a patsy, and used the resulting dispute as a pretext to walk away from an acquisition deal he had already decided he didn't want, while simultaneously destroying the careers of everyone on the other side. My grandfather didn't just ruin Robert. He manufactured the reason to ruin him. I sat with that for a long time. The man my family called great. The patriarch everyone wept over at his funeral. He was a fraud. And his will, the clause designed to protect his legacy from Robert, was built on a lie. I hired a lawyer. Not a family friend, not someone referred by anyone connected to the Whitfields, a completely independent estate and probate attorney named Sandra Kim. I found her through my therapist, of all people. Sandra reviewed everything. The will. The clause. Robert's documentation. She told me two important things. First, the clause in my grandfather's will, while unusual, was legally constructed, but it applied specifically to business disputes with Whitfield and Sons. Robert's documentation, if verified, showed that the dispute itself had been manufactured. That meant the foundational basis of the clause was potentially challengeable. You cannot legally weaponize a clause built on fraudulent conduct by the person who wrote the will. Second, as a biological grandchild of Edmund Whitfield, which the DNA test confirmed, I had inherent standing in the estate. Gerald's letter tried to preempt that, but it was a bluff. A well-dressed bluff, but a bluff. He was hoping I would walk away quietly. He did not count on me having documentation that could reframe his entire grandfather's legacy. Sandra said, and I'm quoting because I wrote it down, "Maya, you're not fighting Gerald. You're fighting a dead man's lie. And lies, unlike people, cannot hire better lawyers." Sandra advised against a formal family meeting before filing anything. I went anyway. I needed to look at them. My mother. Gerald. My Aunt Ruth, Gerald's wife, who had always been perfectly pleasant to my face. My cousin Marcus, who sold me out without a second thought. I walked into that room alone. I put Robert's documentation package on the table. I told them what it contained. I watched Gerald's face go through about 6 different expressions in 4 seconds before settling on controlled fury. He said, "Whatever Robert Oakridge has given you is fabricated." I said, "It's notarized. The man who signed the confession is dead, he cannot recant. And the internal memos have document metadata that places them inside your grandfather's company files from 1993. I'd done my homework. My mother was crying. My aunt was very still. Gerald leaned forward and said, very quietly, "What do you want, Maya?" I said, "I want my share of the trust. I want the clause invalidated based on the fraudulent foundation it was built on. I want my mother's shares protected. And I want a formal acknowledgement, in writing, that Robert Okafor was wrongfully blacklisted by Edmund Whitfield." I paused. That last part isn't about money. That's for my father. Gerald looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, "You're more like your grandfather than you know." I don't think he meant it as a compliment. I chose to take it as one. The legal process is still ongoing. These things take time. Sandra warned me of that from the beginning. Gerald has a team of attorneys. We have documentation. It is not fast, and it is not clean, and some days it is completely exhausting. But here is where we are. The challenge to the trust clause has been formally filed. The court has agreed to hear the case for invalidation based on the fraudulent foundation argument. Gerald's attempt to use my parentage against my mother's shareholding has been countered. Sandra filed a strong response and Gerald's team has gone quiet on that front, which tells me they know it was overreach. My mother has retained her own legal counsel, separate from mine, which is the right call. Our relationship is complicated right now. She made choices to protect herself and her position in this family that cost me enormously. I understand the pressures she was under. I do not excuse them. We are working through it. Danny knows everything now. She came to see me 2 weeks ago and sat on my kitchen floor, actually sat on the floor. I don't know why. She said it felt more honest, and told me she was sorry for every year she benefited from a system that was designed to diminish me. That conversation meant more to me than any legal outcome. Gerald and I do not speak. I expect we won't for a long time. He is calculating his next move. So am I. And Robert, my father, he flew in last month. First time we met in person. He's taller than I expected. He makes terrible coffee but insists it's good. He met Sandra and spent 45 minutes asking her legal questions she said were surprisingly sharp. I sat and watched and thought, this is where I get that from. He told me before he left that he never wanted any of this. The legal fight, the attention, the exposure of old wounds. He said, Maya, I just wanted to know my daughter. I told him he had her. Whatever else happened, he had her. I've been thinking a lot about what my grandfather built. Not just the company, but the architecture of control he constructed around it. The clauses. The blacklists. The strategic silences. The daughter conditioned to choose the estate over the truth. The granddaughter shaped by invisibility so she wouldn't think to ask questions. He was meticulous. I'll give him that. But here's what he didn't account for. He didn't account for Auntie Lorraine keeping her conscience. He didn't account for Robert keeping his documents. He didn't account for me being in therapy long enough to develop a spine. And he definitely didn't account for his own granddaughter inheriting whatever strategic instinct built that company in the first place. I am not doing this for the money. I want to be honest about that, because I know how this looks from the outside. It looks like a woman chasing an inheritance. But the inheritance was always mine. I am fighting because a dead man built a lie to erase my father's life and used that lie to erase mine. And I refuse to let that stand. Not for me, for the next person in this family who gets told to be quiet because the truth is inconvenient. The most powerful thing I have done in this entire situation is not hire a lawyer. It's not filing the challenge. It's not walking into that room and putting documents on a table. The most powerful thing I did was pick up the phone and call a man named Robert. Because that one call began unraveling a 26-year deception that powerful people had spent enormous effort maintaining. The truth is inconvenient for a reason. It costs something to suppress it. And eventually, always eventually, the bill comes due. My name is Maya Whitfield Oakridge. Both names. And I'm not going anywhere.